The clock on the wall read 9:15, and Lisa was pretty sure she'd wiped down table 6 at least 4 times in the last hour. Not because it was dirty. She just needed something to do with her hands, something to keep her mind from wandering to places it shouldn't go at work. The diner was almost empty, just old Mr. Patterson in his usual corner booth, nursing his decaf coffee and reading yesterday's newspaper like he did every Wednesday night. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere in the back she could hear the cook scraping the grill clean. Lisa tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and glanced at the clock again. 9:16, another 2 hours until closing, and then she'd head home to check on her daughter. Her sister was watching her tonight like she did most nights. Lisa owed her so much she'd probably never be able to pay her back. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers. She'd been on them since 6 that morning, working the breakfast and lunch shift at the hospital cafeteria, then coming straight here for the dinner shift. Sleep was something she'd catch later, maybe after midnight, maybe not at all. It didn't really matter anymore. The thing about being tired all the time is that you stop noticing it. It just becomes part of who you are, like breathing. You don't think about it, you just do it. She walked behind the counter and checked her phone. One message from her sister. She ate her dinner. Watching cartoons now. Don't worry. Lisa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. At least today had been a good day. Not all days were good. Some days her little girl couldn't keep anything down. Some days the medicine made her so sick that Lisa would sit next to her bed all night, stroking her hair, telling her stories about princesses and dragons and happy endings. On those nights, Lisa didn't sleep at all. The medical bills were stacked on her kitchen table, held down by a coffee mug so they wouldn't scatter. She'd stopped opening them weeks ago. What was the point? The numbers just got bigger and bigger, and her bank account just got smaller and smaller. It was like trying to fill a bathtub with a teaspoon while someone else was pulling the plug. Her manager, Tony, came out from the kitchen, untying his apron. "You okay to lock up tonight?" he asked. "Yeah, I got it," Lisa said, forcing a smile. "You look tired." "I'm fine." He studied her for a moment, and she could see he didn't believe her. But he didn't push it. Tony was a good guy. He'd let her pick up extra shifts when she needed them, never asked too many questions, and always pretended not to notice when she'd slip food into her bag at the end of the night. "All right then, see you tomorrow," he said, heading toward the back door. Lisa went to her locker in the small break room and pulled out the plastic container she'd brought from home. Inside was chicken and rice, leftovers from 2 nights ago that she'd stretched to last. She'd eaten half for lunch at the hospital cafeteria during her break, and this was the other half. This would be dinner tonight and lunch tomorrow. You get creative when money's tight. You learn to make one chicken breast feed you for 3 days. You learn which day the grocery store marks down their produce. You learn that instant coffee tastes just fine if you don't think about it too much. She put the container back in her locker. She'd heat it up later during her break around 10. Her stomach rumbled, but she'd learned to ignore that too. The bell above the door chimed, and Lisa turned to see a man walk in. He was wearing an expensive-looking coat, the kind you see in department store windows but never actually buy. Dark gray, well-tailored, probably cost more than she made in a month. But something was off. The way he moved, slow and careful, like each step took effort. His face was pale, almost gray, and when he sat down in booth 3, he practically collapsed into the seat. Lisa grabbed a menu and a glass of water, putting on her customer service smile. The one that said everything was fine, that she hadn't just been calculating whether she could afford to buy her daughter the new medicine the doctor recommended. "Evening," she said, setting the water down in front of him.
"Can I get you some coffee to start?"
He looked up at her, and that's when she saw his eyes. Red-rimmed, exhausted, haunted. She recognized that look. She saw it in her mirror every single morning. "Coffee," he said quietly. "Yes, please, black." His hands were shaking as he reached for the menu. Not the shaking of someone cold or nervous, but the deep trembling of someone who'd been running on empty for too long. Lisa poured his coffee and gave him a minute. She'd learned to read customers over the years. You could tell a lot about someone by how they held a menu. This man was staring at it, but he wasn't really reading it. His eyes weren't moving. She'd seen that look before, too. She'd worn it herself plenty of times. That blank stare when the world gets too heavy and you just need a minute to remember how to keep going. After a few minutes, she walked back over. "Know what you'd like?" she asked gently. He looked up at her again, and for just a second she saw something crack in his expression, something vulnerable and raw and real. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. "I thought I had my wallet. I must have left it somewhere. I can't pay for this." He started to stand up, reaching into his coat pockets again, checking them even though he clearly already knew they were empty. From the kitchen, Tony's voice carried through the window. "Lisa, if he can't pay, he can't stay. You know the rules." The man's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I shouldn't have come in." Lisa watched him try to stand, watched him grip the edge of the table to steady himself, and something inside her made a decision before her brain could catch up. "Wait," she heard herself say. "Just wait right here 1 minute." She didn't know why she did it. It went against every logical thought in her head. She barely had enough for herself. Her daughter needed medicine. The bills were piling up. She was already running on empty. But sometimes your heart makes decisions your head would never approve. Sometimes you just know what you have to do. Lisa walked quickly to the break room, her heart pounding. What was she doing? She needed that food. She'd already skipped breakfast and had only eaten half her lunch. Tomorrow was going to be another long day, and without this meal she'd have nothing. But she'd seen the look in that man's eyes. That desperate, empty look of someone who was barely holding it together. She knew that look because she lived it every single day. Her hands shook a little as she opened her locker and pulled out the plastic container. The chicken and rice inside wasn't much. It wasn't fancy. It was just food. But it was all she had. Tony poked his head into the break room. "What are you doing?" "Just getting something," Lisa said, not meeting his eyes. "Lisa, don't," he said, his voice softer now. "I know what you're thinking. But you can't save everyone. You can barely save yourself. I'm just giving him some food. That's your dinner, and your lunch tomorrow. I know. So you're going to go hungry so some stranger can eat?" Lisa turned to look at him. "Have you ever been so tired you can't remember what it feels like to not be tired? So worried that you forget what peace feels like? So empty that you're not even sure you exist anymore?" Tony didn't answer. "I see that in his eyes," Lisa continued. "Whatever he's going through, it's bad. Really bad. And I can't just watch someone suffer when I have anything that might help, even if it's just a warm meal." She walked past Tony before he could argue, popping the container into the microwave. The 45 seconds it took to heat up felt like forever. She could feel Tony watching her from the kitchen doorway, probably thinking she was crazy. Maybe she was. The microwave beeped. Lisa grabbed the container, found a proper plate and fork, and transferred the food. She made it look as nice as she could, even though it was just simple chicken and rice. When she walked back to booth 3, the man was sitting with his head in his hands. He looked up when she approached, and she could see he'd been crying. "Here," she said, setting the plate down in front of him. "Please eat this." He stared at the food, then at her. "I can't take this." "This is your food." "How do you know that?" "The container. Staff locker. I saw you come from the break room." He shook his head. "I can't take your dinner." "Listen," Lisa said, sliding into the booth across from him. She wasn't supposed to sit with customers, but Tony had already seen her give away her food. "Might as well break all the rules tonight. You look like you need this more than I do right now. You don't understand. I couldn't even remember where I left my wallet. I've been at the hospital for 3 days straight. I can't think. I can't focus. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning, and I just needed to get out of that building for an hour before I completely lost my mind." The words came out in a rush, like a dam breaking. "Which hospital?" Lisa asked gently. "County Memorial. My daughter is in the ICU." Lisa felt her chest tighten. "What happened?" "Bacterial infection. It came on so fast." She was fine Monday morning, complaining about a sore throat. By Monday night, she was in the emergency room. By Tuesday, she was in the ICU. They've tried 3 different antibiotics and nothing's working. They told me tonight that if this last treatment doesn't work... His voice broke. "She's only 12 years old." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. She didn't say anything. What could she say? That it would be okay? She didn't know that. That everything happens for a reason? That was just something people said when they didn't know what else to say. Instead, she just held his hand and let him cry. After a moment, he pulled himself together. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. You've already been too kind. I have a daughter, too, Lisa said quietly. She's 7. She has leukemia. The man's eyes widened. I'm so sorry, don't be. We're managing. Some days are better than others. But I understand what you're going through, that fear that lives in your chest and never goes away, that feeling of being completely helpless while you watch your child suffer. How do you do it? He asked. How do you keep going? Lisa thought about that. How did she keep going? I don't know, she admitted. I just wake up every morning and put one foot in front of the other. I go to work. I pay what bills I can. I hold my daughter when she's scared. I read her stories. I make her laugh when I can. And I hope. That's all I can do. Hope that tomorrow will be better than today. What if hope isn't enough? Then you hope anyway. Because what else is there? They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lisa pushed the plate closer to him. Please eat. You need to keep your strength up. Your daughter needs you to be strong for her. He looked at the food, then at her. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. Because someone did something kind for me once when I really needed it, Lisa said, even though it wasn't entirely true. Because I know what it's like to be at the end of your rope. And because maybe the only thing that makes sense in this world is helping each other when we can. The man picked up the fork, his hand still shaking. He took a bite, then another. Lisa could see tears streaming down his face as he ate, but he kept eating. This is really good, he said after a few bites. It's just chicken and rice. It's not just anything. It's kindness. It's hope. It's someone caring when they don't have to. He looked at her directly. What's your name? Lisa. I'm Daniel. He paused. I want to pay you back for this. I will pay you back. You don't have to do that, please. Let me do something. When this is over, when my daughter is better, I want to help you somehow. Lisa smiled sadly. Just focus on your daughter. That's all that matters. They talked for 20 more minutes while Daniel ate. He told her about his daughter, about how she loved to paint and wanted to be an artist, how she was always making him laugh even when things were hard, how she was the strongest person he knew, even at 12 years old. Lisa told him about her daughter, too, about how she was brave during her treatments, how she never complained even when Lisa knew she was in pain, how she still believed in magic and fairy tales and happy endings. 2 parents, 2 sick children, sitting in an almost empty diner at night, sharing their fears and hopes with a stranger who somehow understood. When Daniel finally finished eating, he looked better. There was color in his face again, and his hands had stopped shaking. I need to get back, he said, standing up. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. It's plenty. He reached into his coat and pulled out a pen and a small piece of paper. He wrote something down quickly, then folded it and left it on the table. My daughter's name is Jennifer, he said. Will you remember that? Will you think about her sometimes? I will, Lisa promised, and I'll remember yours. What's your daughter's name? Mia. Mia, he repeated. I'll think about her too. I'll hope for her, and I'll hope for Jennifer. He shook her hand, holding it for a long moment. You saved my life tonight. You really did. I was so lost, so tired, so scared, and you reminded me that there's still good in the world. Thank you. Then he was gone, walking out into the night, back to the hospital and his daughter's bedside. Lisa stood there for a moment, her own stomach growling. She'd given away her only food. She had nothing for tonight, nothing for tomorrow. She'd been stupid and impractical and completely illogical, but somehow, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. She picked up the folded piece of paper he'd left on the table, expecting maybe a phone number or an address, something to keep in touch. She unfolded it, and her entire world stopped. Lisa stared at the piece of paper in her hand. It wasn't a phone number. It wasn't an address. It was a check for $50,000. She had to read it 3 times before her brain would accept what her eyes were seeing. $50,000. Written in careful handwriting. Made out to her. Signed by Daniel Chen. Her legs went weak. She had to sit down right there in booth 3. The same seat where Daniel had been sitting just moments ago. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the check. This couldn't be real. People didn't just hand you $50,000. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She was a waitress working 2 jobs trying to keep her daughter alive. She wasn't someone who received miracles. The memo line read, "For Mia's treatment. Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists." Lisa felt tears streaming down her face. She couldn't stop them, didn't even try. She just sat there in that booth holding a piece of paper that could change everything and cried. Tony came out from the kitchen, took one look at her and rushed over. "Lisa, what's wrong? What happened? Did that guy do something?" She couldn't speak. She just handed him the check. Tony looked at it, looked at her, looked at the check again. His mouth fell open. "Is this real?" "I don't know," Lisa managed to say. "I think so. Maybe, I don't know." "Daniel Chen." Tony read the signature. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Lisa shrugged. She had no idea who Daniel Chen was. Just a father with a sick daughter, sitting in her diner eating her chicken and rice. Tony pulled out his phone and typed something. His eyes went wide. "Lisa, do you know who Daniel Chen is?" "No. He's the founder of Chen Medical Technologies. The guy who invented those new surgical devices that everyone's talking about. He's been on the news. He's worth billions." The words didn't make sense. Billions? That exhausted, desperate man who'd been crying in her diner was worth billions? "There's an article here from 2 days ago," Tony continued, scrolling through his phone. His daughter was rushed to the hospital with a severe infection. The reporters have been trying to get updates, but the family hasn't made any statements. Lisa thought about Daniel, about how broken he'd looked, how lost. Money didn't protect you from pain. It didn't stop your child from getting sick. It didn't make the fear go away. "I need to call my sister," Lisa said, her voice barely working. "You need to go to a bank," Tony said. "First thing tomorrow morning. Get this deposited before something happens to it." But Lisa wasn't thinking about banks. She was thinking about Mia, about the medicine they couldn't afford, about the specialists they'd been told about but could never see because they weren't covered by insurance, about the experimental treatments that might help but cost more than she'd make in 5 years. $50,000. It wouldn't cure Mia's leukemia, but it could buy time. It could buy hope. It could buy a chance. She called her sister from the break room, her voice shaking so badly that her sister thought something terrible had happened. No, everything's okay," Lisa tried to explain. "Something amazing happened. Something impossible. I can't even explain it right now." "Is Mia asleep?" "She just went down about 20 minutes ago. Don't tell her anything yet. I'll be home in a couple hours. I just needed to hear your voice and know she's okay." After she hung up, Lisa just sat on the floor of the break room, holding that check, trying to process what had happened. She'd given away her last meal to a stranger, and he'd given her a miracle in return, but it wasn't really about the money, she realized. It was about what happened in those 20 minutes they'd sat together. Two people in pain, sharing their stories, connecting in a way that reminded them both why life was worth fighting for. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She moved through the motions automatically, cleaning tables, refilling coffee, cashing out Mr. Patterson, locking up the diner, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. When she finally got home just after midnight, her sister was waiting up, demanding to know what was going on. Lisa showed her the check and they both cried together in the kitchen. "This is real?" her sister kept asking. "This is really real?" "I think so, I hope so. I don't know." Lisa went into Mia's room and just watched her daughter sleep. Her little girl, so small and fragile, with her bald head and her pale skin and her brave smile. She'd been through so much already in her 7 years. Too much. "I met someone tonight," Lisa whispered, even though Mia was asleep. "A dad whose daughter is sick too. And he did something so kind for us. So impossibly kind. And I want you to know that there are good people in this world. People who care. People who help when they don't have to." The next morning, Lisa was at the bank when it opened. She showed the check to 3 different people before they finally confirmed it was real. The money was real. Daniel Chen was real. All of it was real. "It'll take a few days to clear," the bank manager told her. "A check this size, we have to verify everything." "But it looks legitimate." Lisa left the bank in a daze. She went to her morning shift at the hospital cafeteria, but she could barely focus. She kept checking her phone, half expecting someone to call and tell her it was all a mistake, that the check had bounced, that it had all been too good to be true. But no call came. 3 days later, the money cleared, $50,000 sitting in her bank account. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. Lisa immediately called Mia's doctor and scheduled an appointment with the specialist they'd always wanted to see. She paid off the most urgent medical bills. She bought actual groceries, more than she'd bought at one time in years. She let herself breathe for the first time in months. but she kept thinking about Daniel and his daughter Jennifer. She hoped they were okay. She hoped the last treatment had worked. She hoped Jennifer was recovering. A week after that night in the diner, Lisa's phone rang from an unknown number. Her heart jumped, somehow knowing before she answered who it would be. "Lisa," Daniel's voice sounded different, lighter, happier. "I hope you don't mind me calling. Tony at the diner gave me your number." "Daniel, how's Jennifer?" "She's going to be okay." She could hear the smile in his voice, hear the relief and joy. The antibiotics finally started working. She turned a corner 3 days ago. She's being released from the hospital tomorrow. Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. "That's wonderful. That's such wonderful news. How's Mia?" "We saw a specialist yesterday. A really good one. One we couldn't have afforded before. He's optimistic. He thinks there's a new treatment protocol that might really help her." "That's what I was hoping to hear." Daniel paused. "Lisa, I need to tell you something. That night in the diner, I was at my lowest point. I'd been sitting in that hospital for 3 days, watching my daughter fight for her life, and I felt completely powerless. I left to clear my head, and I realized I'd forgotten my wallet, and I just broke down. I was ready to give up. You don't have to explain, but I do. Because you need to understand what you did for me. It wasn't just the food. It was that you saw me. Really saw me. Not as some rich businessman or some successful entrepreneur, just as a scared father who needed help. And you helped without question, without wanting anything in return. You gave me something when you had almost nothing yourself. Do you know how rare that is?" Lisa didn't know what to say. "You saved me that night," Daniel continued. "You gave me the strength to go back into that hospital and keep fighting for Jennifer. And I realized something sitting in that booth eating your chicken and rice. I've spent my whole career developing medical technology to save lives. I've made devices that help surgeons, that help patients, that improve outcomes. But what you did was just as powerful as anything I've ever invented. You showed me that sometimes the most important medicine is simple human compassion. I just did what anyone would do." "No. That's exactly the point. Most people wouldn't. Most people would have followed the rules. They would have let me leave. They would have protected what little they had. But you chose differently, and that choice changed everything." The phone call with Daniel lasted for over an hour. They talked about their daughters, about their fears, about that strange night when two strangers had connected over shared pain and unexpected kindness. Before he hung up, Daniel said something that Lisa would never forget. "The check was just money. But what you gave me was worth so much more. You gave me hope when I had none. And I want to do more than just write a check. I want to really help." "You've already done so much," Lisa protested. "Not enough. Never enough. Lisa, I've spent years building a company, making money, achieving success. But that night in your diner, I realized I'd lost sight of what really matters. I want to make sure Mia gets the absolute best care possible. Every treatment, every specialist, whatever she needs. Will you let me help with that?" Lisa was crying again. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes, please, let me do this. Not because I owe you, but because I want to. Because helping you helps me remember why I started my company in the first place. To save lives." Over the following weeks, Daniel was true to his word. He connected Lisa with the top pediatric oncologists in the country. He arranged for Mia to be seen at a renowned children's hospital with cutting-edge treatment programs. He made sure that every medical bill, every prescription, every treatment was covered. But it was more than just the financial help. Daniel and his family became part of Lisa's life in a way she never expected. One Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks after that night in the diner, Daniel showed up at Lisa's small apartment with his wife and Jennifer. The 12-year-old girl was still pale and thin from her hospital stay, but her eyes were bright and she was smiling. Jennifer wanted to meet the woman who helped her dad when he needed it most, Daniel explained. Mia was shy at first, hiding behind Lisa's leg, but Jennifer sat down on the floor and pulled out a sketchbook. "My dad said you have a daughter who likes princesses." Jennifer said softly, "I like to draw. Would you like to see my princess drawings?" Within minutes, the two girls were sitting together, looking through Jennifer's sketchbook, talking about their favorite colors and stories and dreams. Lisa watched them, these two children who'd both been so sick, both fought so hard, now just being kids together. Daniel's wife, a kind woman named Rebecca, touched Lisa's arm. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for being there when my family needed someone." "I just gave him some food," Lisa said. "You gave him much more than that." You gave him a reason to keep going, and that saved Jennifer's life just as much as the medicine did. They spent the afternoon together, and it was the most normal, peaceful time Lisa had experienced in months. No hospitals, no bills, no fear. Just two families sharing pizza and watching their daughters color and laugh. As weeks turned into months, Mia's treatment progressed better than anyone had hoped. The new protocol was working. Her blood counts were improving. She was getting stronger. Daniel visited often, always with some excuse. He wanted to check on Mia's progress. He wanted Jennifer to have a friend who understood what she'd been through. He wanted to bring over some new toy or book he thought Mia might like. But Lisa understood what he was really doing. He was staying connected to the reminder of what really mattered. In her small apartment, surrounded by humble furniture and simple meals, he found something he couldn't find in his mansion or his boardroom. He found authenticity. He found purpose. He found meaning. One evening, 6 months after that night in the diner, Daniel and Lisa sat on her apartment steps while their daughters played in the courtyard. The summer air was warm, and somewhere nearby someone was grilling dinner. "Can I tell you something?" Daniel said. "That night when I came into your diner, I was actually considering giving up. Not just on staying at the hospital, but on everything. The board of my company had been pushing me to step down and focus on Jennifer. I was thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I should just walk away from it all. But you didn't. No, because of you. Because you showed me that giving up isn't the answer. You were working 2 jobs, raising a sick daughter alone, barely surviving, and you still found it in your heart to help a stranger. If you could keep fighting, how could I quit?" He paused, watching Jennifer and Mia chase each other around the courtyard, both girls healthy and happy. "I went back to the hospital that night with new determination," Daniel continued. "I fought for Jennifer. I demanded the doctors try new approaches. I refused to accept the worst-case scenarios they were preparing me for. And she pulled through. Then I went back to my company with the same energy. We've developed 3 new medical devices in the past 6 months, products that will help thousands of patients. All because you reminded me why I started this work in the first place." Lisa shook her head in amazement. "I still can't believe that giving away my dinner led to all this." "It wasn't about the dinner. It was about the choice you made. You had every reason to protect what little you had. You were struggling just as much as I was, maybe more. But you chose compassion anyway. That's heroism. That's true strength." A few weeks later, Daniel called Lisa with a proposal. "My company is establishing a new foundation. We're going to help families who are struggling with medical costs. Families like yours was, and I want you to help run it." "Me? Daniel, I'm not qualified for something like that. You're the most qualified person I know. You've lived it. You understand what these families are going through. You know what they need, not just financially, but emotionally. I don't want some corporate executive running this foundation. I want someone who has a heart for the work, someone who'll treat every family the way you treated me that night." Lisa was speechless. "The position comes with a salary that will let you quit your other jobs," Daniel added. "You'll have health insurance for you and Mia. You'll be able to focus on her care while also helping other families. Will you consider it?" It felt like too much. Like a dream she'd wake up from any moment. But it was real. Daniel was real. The foundation was real. The opportunity was real. "I'll do it," Lisa said, "on one condition. Name it. The first family we help, we do it anonymously. No press releases, no publicity. We just help them quietly, the way you helped me." Daniel smiled. "Deal." 1 year after that night in the diner, the foundation had helped over 50 families with medical costs. Lisa worked tirelessly, reviewing applications, connecting families with resources, making sure no one fell through the cracks the way she almost had. Mia's leukemia was in remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. She'd started 2nd grade, her hair had grown back, and she was thriving. Jennifer was completely recovered and back to her art. She'd even started donating prints of her paintings to the foundation, with all proceeds going to help more families. The 2 girls were inseparable now, best friends bonded by their shared experiences and their family's unlikely connection. On the anniversary of that night, Daniel took Lisa back to the diner. It was a Wednesday evening around 9 o'clock. The same time he'd walked in a year ago. Tony was still working there, though he was getting ready to retire. He'd told everyone who would listen about the night Lisa gave away her last meal and changed her life forever. They sat in booth 3, the same booth where it all happened. A lot has changed in a year, Lisa said, looking around the familiar diner. Everything has changed, Daniel corrected. You gave me back my purpose. You showed me what really matters. You helped me save my daughter's life, and in doing so, you saved your own daughter's life too. It's still hard for me to wrap my head around sometimes. That one decision, one moment of kindness led to all of this. That's the thing about kindness, Daniel said. You never know how far it will reach. You never know whose life you might change. You gave away your dinner without expecting anything in return. And look what happened. Tony came over to their table, grinning. The usual, he joked. Actually, Daniel said, we'll take 2 orders of chicken and rice, if you have it. For you too? Always. As they waited for their food, Lisa thought about that night 1 year ago. How tired she'd been, how hungry, how desperate, how she'd made a choice that made no logical sense, that defied all practical reasoning, but it had been the right choice. Not because of the money or the job or the foundation, but because it had connected 2 people who needed each other at exactly the right moment. 2 parents fighting for their children's lives. 2 people at the end of their rope. 2 strangers who became family. You know what the best part is? Lisa said. It's not the foundation or the money or even Mia's remission, as grateful as I am for all of that. What is it? It's that Jennifer and Mia have each other. That they'll grow up together. That they'll always have a friend who truly understands what they went through. That's the real gift, Daniel nodded, his eyes bright. I think about that a lot. How one act of kindness doesn't just change one life. It ripples out, touching so many others. Every family we help through the foundation, every life we save. It all started because you decided to give away your dinner to a stranger. 2 years after that night in the diner, Lisa stood in front of a room full of people at the Foundation's annual gala. She wasn't comfortable with public speaking. She'd much rather be in the office, quietly helping families one at a time. But Daniel had asked her to share her story, and she couldn't say no to him. The room was filled with donors, doctors, families they'd helped, and media covering the Foundation's work. Lisa took a deep breath and began. I'm not really sure how to start this, she said honestly. 2 years ago, I was working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet, trying to save my daughter's life while my bank account kept getting smaller and the medical bills kept getting bigger. I was tired all the time, scared all the time, and I felt very, very alone. She paused, looking out at the faces watching her. One Wednesday night, I was working the dinner shift at a small diner. I had a container in my locker with chicken and rice, the last food I had until payday. My plan was to eat half that night and save half for the next day. That was my reality, stretching one meal to last 2 days because that's what you do when you're trying to survive. Some people in the audience nodded. They understood. Then a man came into the diner. He looked lost and exhausted and desperate. He ordered coffee but then realized he didn't have his wallet. My manager told him he had to leave. And I watched this man try to stand up, watched him struggle, and I saw something in his eyes that I recognized. I saw my own pain reflected back at me. Lisa's voice grew stronger. I went to the back and got my container of food, my only food, and I gave it to him. Not because I expected anything in return. Not because I thought he might be rich or important or able to help me someday. I gave it to him because he was a human being who was suffering, and I had something that might help, even if just a little bit. Even if it meant I would go hungry. She saw Daniel in the audience, watching her with tears in his eyes. That man was Daniel Chen, and his daughter was in the ICU fighting for her life. He was at his breaking point just like I was, and we sat together in that diner and shared our stories. 2 parents fighting the same battle, connected by the pain that only people in our situation could truly understand. Lisa held up a piece of paper, the original check that had started everything. When Daniel left that night, he left this on the table, $50,000. I thought it was a mistake. I thought maybe I was dreaming. But it was real, and it changed my life. It let me get Mia the treatment she needed. It gave us hope when we had none left. She set the check down and looked directly at the audience. But here's what I want you to understand. The money was amazing. The money saved us. But that's not what this story is really about. What changed my life wasn't the check. It was the moment I decided to give away my last meal. That decision, that choice to help someone when I could barely help myself, that's what saved me. The room was completely silent, because in that moment I remembered who I was. I wasn't just a struggling single mother drowning in medical bills. I wasn't just a waitress working 2 jobs. I was a person who still had the power to make a difference. I was someone who could still choose kindness over fear, generosity over scarcity, hope over despair. Lisa's voice filled with emotion. Daniel says I saved his life that night, but the truth is he saved mine too, not with money but with something more important. He showed me that kindness isn't wasted, that giving doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger, that even when you have almost nothing, you still have something valuable to offer the world. She gestured to the room around them. This foundation exists because 2 strangers chose to see each other's humanity in a moment of crisis. It exists because we both learned that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in how we treat each other. We've helped over 200 families in the past 2 years. 200 families who were where I was, drowning in medical debt, sacrificing everything for their children's health, losing hope. Lisa picked up another piece of paper, a letter from one of the families they'd helped. This is from a father whose son has cystic fibrosis. Listen to what he wrote. When we got the call that our medical bills would be covered, I broke down and cried. Not just because of the money, but because it meant someone cared. Someone saw us. Someone thought we were worth helping. That feeling of being seen and valued, that's what really saved us. She set the letter down. That's what this is all about. Yes, we help with medical costs. Yes, we connect families with specialists and treatments. But more than anything, we remind people that they're not alone, that their struggle matters, that someone cares. Because sometimes that's the most powerful medicine of all. Lisa looked at Daniel again. My daughter Mia is now in complete remission. She's healthy and happy and thriving. Daniel's daughter Jennifer is fully recovered and creating beautiful art. They're best friends, these 2 girls who both fought so hard to survive. And watching them play together, watching them laugh and dream and plan their futures, that's the real miracle. Her voice broke a little. But I think about all the other families out there who are sitting in hospital rooms right now, scared and alone. I think about all the parents who are working 3 jobs and still can't make ends meet. I think about all the people who feel invisible, who think no one cares, who are losing hope. Lisa addressed the audience directly. Every single one of you in this room has the power to change someone's life. Maybe not with $50,000. Maybe not even with $50. But you have something, a kind word, a listening ear, a meal, a moment of your time. And you never know when that small act of kindness might be exactly what someone needs to keep going. She paused, letting her words sink in. I was a waitress who gave away her last meal. That's all I did. But it created a ripple effect that has touched hundreds of lives. Not because I'm special or heroic or different from anyone else, but because I made a choice. One moment of choosing to help instead of looking away. Lisa smiled through her tears. So here's what I want you to take from my story. Don't wait until you have more money, more time, more resources to be kind. Don't tell yourself that your small act won't make a difference. Don't think that because you're struggling you have nothing to give. I was struggling. I was barely surviving. But I still had something to offer. And so do you. The room erupted in applause, but Lisa held up her hand. Before I finish, I want to introduce you to someone. Mia, sweetheart, can you come up here? Her daughter, now 9 years old with long hair and rosy cheeks, climbed onto the stage. She looked healthy and strong. Nothing like the pale, sick child she'd been 2 years ago. Tell them what you told me last night, Lisa said softly. Mia spoke into the microphone, her voice clear and confident. I want to help other kids who are sick like I was. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to remember that being sick is scary, and sometimes what you need most isn't just medicine. You need someone to care about you. Lisa hugged her daughter close. Out of the mouths of babes, right? Mia gets it. She understands what I learned that night in the diner. That caring for each other, really seeing each other, really being there for each other, that's what makes us human. That's what gives life meaning. She took a deep breath. I'll leave you with this. That night I had a choice. I could have followed the rules. I could have protected my last meal. I could have sent that stranger away and no one would have blamed me. I was struggling too. I needed that food. I had every logical reason to say no. Lisa's eyes swept across the room. But I said yes. I chose to help. And that choice didn't just change my life or Daniel's life or our daughter's lives. It created this foundation that has helped hundreds of people. It inspired others to give. It reminded people that kindness matters. One choice, one meal, one moment of compassion, and look what happened. She picked up the original check one more time. This piece of paper represents more than money. It represents the truth that we're all connected, that your pain is my pain, that your joy is my joy, that when I lift you up, I lift myself up too. That's the real treasure. That's the real gift. Not what we get, but what we give. Lisa looked at Mia, then at Daniel and Jennifer in the audience, then back at the crowd. So I challenge each of you. Go out and find your moment. Find that person who needs help. Find that opportunity to give something when it doesn't make logical sense. Find that chance to choose compassion over calculation, because you never know. You might just change the world. Or at the very least, you'll change one person's world. And isn't that enough? Isn't one life worth it? The applause was deafening now. People were standing, crying, moved by her words. But Lisa wasn't finished. One last thing, she said, her voice cutting through the applause. To anyone out there who's struggling right now, who feels alone, who thinks no one cares, I want you to know something. You matter. Your life has value. Your struggle is seen. And there are people like Daniel who want to help. There are people like me who understand. You're not alone. She smiled, tears streaming down her face. 2 years ago, I gave away my last meal to a stranger. Today, I'm standing here watching our foundation help families all over the country. Today, my daughter is healthy. Today, I have a career that gives me purpose. Today, I have a friend in Daniel and his family. Today, I wake up with hope instead of fear. Lisa's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the room. All because I chose kindness when I had every reason not to. All because I gave when I had almost nothing left to give. All because I believed, even in my darkest moment, that helping another human being was worth the cost. She looked directly into the eyes of person after person in the audience. That's the lesson. That's the message. That's the truth that will set you free. Kindness isn't what you do when you have extra. Kindness is what you choose when it costs you something. And that kind of kindness, the kind that requires sacrifice, that's the kind that changes the world. Lisa stepped back from the microphone, holding Mia's hand. The room exploded with applause again. People were hugging each other, wiping tears, pulling out their phones to make donations on the spot. Daniel came up on stage and hugged Lisa and Mia. Jennifer joined them. The four of them stood there together, this little family that had been forged in the fire of crisis and cemented by unexpected grace. Later that night, after the gala had ended and the crowds had left, Lisa and Daniel sat outside on the steps of the venue. It was late and the city was quiet around them. You did good tonight, Daniel said. Your speech was powerful. I meant every word. I know you did. That's why it was powerful. He paused. Do you ever regret it? Giving away your food that night? Lisa laughed. How could I regret it? Look at everything that came from it. But in that moment, you didn't know what would happen. You just knew you'd be hungry. True, but I also knew I'd still be me. Still be someone who believed in helping others. And that was worth being hungry for. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. You know what I think about sometimes? Lisa said. I think about all the times I didn't help. All the people I walked past because I was too busy or too tired or too worried about my own problems. And I wonder what might have happened if I'd stopped, if I'd seen them, if I'd helped. You can't save everyone, Lisa. I know, but I can try. We can try. That's what the foundation is for, right? To be that helping hand for as many people as possible. Daniel nodded. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd gone to a different diner that night. If I'd just gone home instead. If you'd decided to keep your food. How different everything would be. But you didn't, and I didn't, and here we are. Here we are, Daniel repeated. 2 years later, hundreds of families helped. 2 healthy daughters and a friendship that I treasure more than any business deal I've ever made. Lisa smiled. Who would have thought? A waitress and a billionaire brought together by chicken and rice. The best chicken and rice I've ever had. They both laughed. Then Lisa grew serious. Daniel, I want you to know something. You changed my life with your generosity. But you also taught me something important. You taught me that it's okay to receive help. For so long, I was just trying to survive on my own. Too proud to ask for anything, too scared to depend on anyone. You showed me that accepting help with grace is just as important as giving it. And you taught me that real wealth has nothing to do with money. Daniel replied. You had nothing, and yet you gave everything. That's true richness. That's the kind of wealth I want to build now. Not in my bank account, but in my impact on others. The city lights twinkled around them, and somewhere in the distance they could hear music playing. What do you think happens next? Lisa asked. Where does this go from here? More families helped. More lives changed. More moments like ours where kindness creates miracles. Daniel smiled. And maybe, just maybe, we inspire others to do the same. To give when it costs them. To help when it's hard. To choose compassion over comfort. That's a beautiful vision. It's your vision, Lisa. You started this. No, Lisa said firmly. We started this, together. Two people in pain who chose to see each other's humanity. That's how change happens. Not through one person being a hero, but through connection. Through understanding, through choosing to care. As they sat there under the stars, Lisa thought about that night 2 years ago. The exhaustion, the fear, the impossible choice. And she realized something profound. She'd thought she was giving away her last meal. But really, she'd been planting a seed that had grown into something beautiful and life-giving, something that would continue to bear fruit for years to come. One meal, one choice, one moment of deciding that another person's pain mattered more than her own comfort. That's all it took to change everything. And the beautiful thing was, anyone could do it. Rich or poor, young or old, powerful or powerless, everyone had something to give. Everyone had the power to make that choice. Lisa looked up at the sky, at the countless stars shining above them, and she smiled. Thank you, she whispered, not sure who she was thanking. The universe maybe, or fate, or just the mysterious way that life connects us when we need it most. For what? Daniel asked. For everything. For that night. For this moment. For reminding me that even in our darkest hours there's still light. There's still hope. There's still kindness, and there on those steps, with her friend beside her and her healthy daughter sleeping at home, Lisa finally understood the full truth of what had happened. She hadn't just given away a meal that night, she'd given away fear and received courage, she'd given away scarcity and received abundance. She'd given away isolation and received connection. She'd given away despair and received hope, not because of money or success or recognition, but because of something simpler and more profound. Because she'd chosen to see another human being suffering and decided it mattered. That was the real miracle. Not the check, not the foundation, not even the healing of their daughters. The real miracle was the reminder that we all have the power to change someone's life. Not someday, not when we're more prepared or more capable or more resourceful. Right now, with what we have, with who we are, one person, one choice, one moment of kindness, that's all it takes to change the world.